So the last of the 4 methods for solving is solving by factoring. This would be the best method to use if it's already factored. Like this is in factored form. This is something times something equals 0. So if you think back, there's the 0 property of multiplication. Says if I multiply by 0, I get 0, right? So if these two things multiplied to be 0, one of them must be 0. So I'm going to set them equal to 0. So I'll take the first one and do x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, well what would x be? Well, let's solve it. I'm going to add 3 to cancel that out, and I get x equals 3. I use the addition property of equality here. So that is one of my possible solutions. Well, what if this one, this factor, what if that one was 0? So I'm going to set this equal to 0. And I'm going to solve. Okay, I have to get the 1 over first. I'm using the subtraction property of equality. Those cancel out. I have 2x equals negative 1. And now I need to get rid of the coefficient. I'm going to divide. I'm using the division property of equality. And I get x equals negative 1/2. If I had to write my answer as a solution set, remember the set builder notation looks like this. Normally you would write the smaller one first, the bigger one second. It really does not matter though. Okay, but if it was a multiple choice answer, you would see them in that order. Okay, so that's called my solution set. Now, as always, I want to check my solution, right? I want to check it. So I like to use the store key when I check it. These new calculators are awesome, by the way. Makes things like this a lot easier. So first I'm going to store negative 1/2. I'm going to put that into x. And then if that's a correct solution, it will make my equation true, right? So I'm going to enter my equation. X minus 3, and then 2x plus 1, and then it should give me 0 if this is a correct solution. And it does. Now I'm not finished because I want to go check my other solution, which was 3. So now I'm going to store 3 into x. And this is one of my favorite things about the new calculator. Instead of retyping, I can go up on top of it. And if I go too far, I can go back, which you could not do in the old calculators. Okay, so if I go on top of it and push enter, it types the whole thing in for me again. I didn't have to retype. Okay, so 3 should also make this one 0. Yep. So I have my two solutions. So solving by factoring really is the best method when you have it factored already. Okay? Now, when you have something like this, maybe it's a good method for you, maybe not. For me, I've had lots of practice with factoring. It's my favorite method. Another student might say, you know what, I want to go to y equals on my calculator and do it by graphing. Okay, somebody else might say, I like the quadratic formula. All right, but I'm going to show you solving by factoring. So remember, when I'm trying to factor, first of all, it has to be in standard form. It has to be equal to 0. If you have to move things to get it that way, you do that first. When I'm factoring, I have no common factor. There's nothing I can pull out. My leading coefficient is 1. It's a trinomial. There's 1, 2, 3 terms. So I'm looking for two numbers whose product is 15, who multiply to be positive 15, and whose sum is negative 8. I can list these out, so I want them to multiply to be 15. So 1 times 15, 2 does not work. 3 times 5, 4 does not work. Now I'm at 5, so I'm done. So those are my two choices. So the first thing I do when I break these up is decide my signs. X times x will get me the x squared. Now, what are my two signs going to be? Well, to decide, they multiply to be a positive. So that means I'm looking at a positive times a positive or negative times a negative. Well, their sum is negative. So which one is it? Two positives or two negatives? Two negatives. It has to be two negatives. Okay? The reason why I do this first is because when I go to decide which one it is here, well, if the signs are the same, they should add up to 8. If the signs were different, they're really subtracting to the 8. It's really the difference. So that's why I decide my sign first. So the signs are the same, so their sum should be 8. That's going to be 3 and 5. And they were both negative. Okay? So remember, if the product of these two factors, if these multiply to be 0, one of them had to be 0. So I'm going to set this one equal to 0 and solve. And that was a coincidence that it's the same solution as the last problem. Okay, so 3 is one of my solutions. I go and solve here. If that was 0, I would have to add 5, addition property of equality. I get x equals 5. My solution set, if I write it as a set, is 3, 5. This is different than an ordered pair. Like if I go graph a point, that would have parentheses. This is a solution set. These are my two solutions. So when I check this, this is very, very important. When you check, always, no matter what, when you're checking, you always go all the way back to the beginning. Because if you check in this one, well, you might have made a mistake in here. And then you're not going to catch that it's wrong. So always go back to the original. Even if you had to, like, let's say I had to move something to get it in standard form. Like, let's say I had the 15 was over here. It was negative 15. I would go all the way back to the beginning to check. Okay, so I'm going back to the beginning. So first I'm going to store 3. 3 store into x. Whoa. 3 store into x. My buttons are sticky. Okay, I'm going to put in the right side and I should get 0. X squared minus 8x plus 15. I got 0. Now I'm going to go check the second one. 5 store into x. I'm going to just go on top of this so I don't have to retype it. Up it comes. Enter. It gave me 0. So both those solutions made my original equation true, so I know that they are correct.